As far as Facebook violating its agreement with the FTC, which it had made several years ago to avoid these sort of privacy concerns, do you see this as a violation?
I do. Thanks for having me. I do. The order required that the company not be deceptive with regards to its statements around its privacy, as well as have a comprehensive privacy program. And I think the reporting highlights that neither of these actually were followed through.
Julie, the Facebook defense today says none of these partnerships or features gave companies access to information without people's permission. Is that sufficient defense? Does it cover them of all potential wrongdoing, or is it not? Is it fair for the individuals to say, well, we didn't know we were signing up for that?
Well, I think it's Facebook's fault. I think they've got lousy corporate governance. I've talked about this numerous times on this program. What scares me is, as we know that Zuckerberg has a majority vote, and he really is in control of the entire company, and he really doesn't have a clue about what it means to protect people's privacy.
Ashkan, and I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name earlier, what's new here? I mean, it feels like every time some investigative team at a newspaper digs something up, it's even more damning and more alarming at the Facebook behavior and how they handled users' information. What else have we learned here?
I don't think anything is new per se, but the scale and scope is magnified for sure. And to your earlier question of whether consent is enough, I think companies like Facebook consider just by signing up to the service consent,
Correct.
which I think most users would not consider just a buried term of service. But what this really highlights is the statement that the company does not sell people's information. And in fact, when they don't sell it for dollars, they do sell it for exchange for integration onto new platforms or partnerships where developers build apps for them. So it is a sale.
That's their entire business model.
But Ashkan, just going back to what you said, what's new here? In the statement from the company today, they asked themselves a question. Did partners get access to messages? The answer is yes. We're not talking about people changing their status or updating. This is personal messages between individuals, as if you're posting someone a letter. The postman would never be allowed to open that letter to read it, to make money off it, whether or not somewhere someone signed up to allow that or not without knowing. Individual users didn't know that their private messages were being read.
This is exactly what the problem is, right? Because we have different ideas of what's privacy and what isn't. This is a brave new world. We just created a new sector for these companies. There really isn't. There are no rules for these guys. And if we're letting them establish the rules, we've got a problem. And that is what is going on now. This is like Zuckerberg, trying to dig himself out of a big, deep sand pit. It's not going to get any better. And I think that as shareholders, we have to decide, are we willing to live with this stock as it drops another 50 points or whatever? Do we want to own shares of a company where the CEO, who has complete control over all, every single decision that's made at that company, clearly doesn't understand what the problem is? I mean, when people go on Facebook, they want to post pictures of their grandchildren and talk to their friends. They're not expecting that in 2 seconds all this information is going to be shared. I mean, I think they probably should expect that, but they don't.
Well, on some level, just the ubiquity of Facebook is always going to make it a target for opportunities from the advertising side, from people who want to spread kind of malign viral messages and for everything else. So it seems to be, the impression is that it's going to be an ongoing process. It has to be part of the assumption of how this company is run. And it's not clear to me, is it clear to you that if there was a different management structure, that approach would change?
I do think the management structure has a lot to do with it. I think up to the C-suite level, there's a lot of focus on growth at any cost. And we've seen folks resign. We've seen WhatsApp, the founders, leave a great deal of money on the table to separate themselves from the company. I think there's a lot of concern with the philosophy and the ethos of the company, and I think a change would address that. Both Sheryl, Boz, Mark himself, I think they have a lot of influence about these practices and whether these are prioritized or not.
Julie, we're out of time.
Which you
but
know,
just made
and we know
pretty
that
compelling-
can't.
I just
that
want to
can't
get to the
happen.
heart
You
of this,
understand
Julie.
that.
You made a good investment thesis against owning the shares, and yet I introduced you as a shareholder. So why do you still own?
Right. Well, I bought 58,000 shares. I think by the end of 2014, we had 58,000 shares, and now we've got about 16,000 shares. The reason I'm hanging on to some of the shares, and it's actually in our retirement accounts at work, is because we're filing shareholder resolutions asking Mark Zuckerberg to give up his majority voting structure. So he gets 10 times the votes of every other shareholder that owns shares of the company. He's not a majority shareholder anymore, but he gets to control everything. He gets to control the board. He gets to control senior management. He gets to control whether or not he steps down. So we think that there's a conversation that needs to happen and needs to continue to happen, you know, to try to get this guy to understand that he doesn't have the skill set anymore to run this company, because he's not taking care of shareholders and their customers, quite truthfully. You know, he's become kind of the robber baron of the communications sector.